It's New Year's Eve. Partying, drinking, countdowns for the new year. Don't tell me everyone's sane. There's bound to be some creeps out there on New Year's Eve, whether they're drunk people looking for trouble or malicious party guests who spike your drink. Grab a blanket, turn off your lights, and get ready for the countdown after party. 5, 4, 3, 2. Close call on New Year's Eve. I attended what was expected to be a super fun party ringing in 2015 at a close friend's home. I expected to be awake until dawn, so I made sure to eat a big dinner and arrived late to the party, around 11 p.m. with two of my best friends. We're a pretty tight-knit social group, and despite the party being a combination house shown with several bands playing, I knew virtually all of the 60 or so people who were already there when I arrived. Among friends and acquaintances, everyone was celebrating, drinking, and having a great time. I had planned to meet up with some other friends around 2 a.m. when they were done bartending a public event, so I was drinking socially, but in moderation. I'm no stranger to the sauce and have a healthy tolerance. By midnight, the party had grown to at least 100 people, and by this time, there were people drifting in from neighboring parties and the surrounding university area, despite attempts to limit attendees to people we all actually knew. I opened my third beer at around 1 a.m. and continued taking photos, snaps, and messaging other friends who were not there. Around 1:30 a.m., I started to feel really drunk, and thinking that perhaps I was just overwhelmed by the constant activity all around me, I stepped into the mostly empty living room for a breather, and to message my friend. I sent her a message inviting her to the party, and we planned on meeting up. As I finished my message, I felt someone come up behind me. He pressed his body against me as he grabbed my hip. As I strained up, I could feel him bending down slightly to whisper into my ear. But it wasn't a whisper. He clearly said to me, "In a few minutes, you aren't going to remember anything. And then, I'm going to rape the shit out of you." I froze. It hit me. I wasn't really feeling drunk. The confusion I had attributed to social anxiety or the large crowd, I was experiencing because I had been drugged. I knew I only had moments to prevent this. I ran from him, best as I could, and didn't turn around. I went and retrieved my purse and jacket and started calling the two people. I was so out of it. I was having a hard time communicating what was happening. I started crying, moving throughout the house, trying to find someone I could explain it to. I was too disoriented. Thankfully, friend number 1 was able to leave from bartending early and came to get me. He called me, and as I ran outside, the creepy guy literally chased me. I got to my friend's car, and as I started to black out, he said the creepy guy was trying to wave him down, shouting to him that he was my friend and was going to take me home. Friend number 1 told me, and I just kept saying, "Drive, drive." And he took me home, where we met up with friend number 2, who was also bartending another event. At 2:30 a.m., I lost consciousness and remained unconscious for 5.5 hours. They were shaking me, trying to get some kind of reaction. Nothing. I didn't respond in any way. They sat up with me throughout the night to make sure I was okay. Around 7 a.m., I somehow managed to get up and climbed into my bed. At 9 a.m., I awoke with a start and had no idea where I was. I was so relieved to discover I was safely at home. I was high for a total of 20 hours and didn't feel normal again for several days. I don't think I'll ever know who drugged me, and I only have a vague description to work from. An elevator encounter with a strange man. Hello Reddit. This experience happened to me a long time ago, when I was very young, around 7 or 8 years old I believe. But after poking around this subreddit for a while, I felt this was an appropriate place to tell my story. So basically, my entire family was throwing a reunion/New Year's Eve party at this huge hotel, and all of the adults decided to go down to the bar to drink, thinking all of us kids were asleep. Obviously, we weren't. There was enough candy and soda to keep us up for 72 hours, and we decided to go run out in the hallway to play a game of hide and seek. Yeah, a real smart idea. Anyways, there was 6 children, and we split into 2 groups, 3 each, hiding together so no one could wander off and get us into trouble. When it was my group's turn to hide, we somehow all managed to get lost at different corners of the hotel, and being the child that I was, the thought of being lost was already frightening enough for me. After circling the floor of our rooms about 5 times, I decided it would be the logical thing to just go down to the bars, where my parents were. Big mistake. I walked to the elevator, and when the doors opened, there was already a man in there. I didn't think much of it, as this was a big hotel. It's no surprise that someone else had to take the elevator to the main floor as well. He asked if I needed to go down to the first floor too, and I said yes. The man was very tall and reeked of beer, and he had on a dirty trench coat and sunglasses. I tried to maintain as little eye contact with him as possible, until he asked me a rather odd question. He asked, "You're looking for your friends, right?" I stood speechless, wondering how he knew what I was doing before. He stated, "You're the one who's playing hide and seek, aren't you?" I mumbled a scared, yeah, finding it weird that he seemed to have been watching us play this game the whole time. We both remained quiet until the doors had opened to the 3rd floor, not the main one. I just thought the man hit the wrong button or something, so I reached to hit the first button, when he reached for my arm and tried to drag me out of the elevator. I froze up as he said, "Come on, I know where your friends are," gesturing to the dead end of the hallway where all the vending machines were. He walked closer to me, grabbing my arm and again attempting to drag me to the isolated section of the hall. I managed to twist away and bolted to the stairs, practically screeching the whole time. I managed to reach the main floor, only to run into my entire family, including the relatives I was playing hide and seek with, whom were looking for me the whole time I was with this man. Needless to say, I still get a little wary when I'm alone with a stranger in an elevator. New Year's Eve. This happened to me on New Year's Eve a year ago. I was at this party where a bunch of friends had gathered just to hang out, eat, and celebrate together. Nothing crazy in particular happened during the event itself, but rather when I was on my way home. As I was walking along the sidewalk, I think it must have been around 3 a.m. or something, I saw this middle-aged man coming in my direction. I thought little of it, as I assumed he was merely passing, until I noticed that he started to slow down as we neared each other. I think he smiled at me as I walked past him. Not a crazy smile or anything, just a smile. So I smiled back. Just as I thought that I had been stupidly suspicious about this man, I heard him calling out from behind me. Like, he was calling after me. I stopped in my tracks and faced him to see what he wanted, and I saw him walking back towards me with his arm outstretched. As he stopped in front of me, he reached out his arm as if he wanted to shake mine. This was when I began to get a little more apprehensive about the situation. I'm sure he must have noticed how I hesitated before I decided to shake his hand. I didn't want to be a suspicious person, but I considered the possibility that he might be concealing a knife in the sleeve of his coat, that he might try to mug me, or even try to kill me. I thought about what would happen if I started to run away. Would he just shrug and continue on his way, or would he follow me? All this flashed through my mind until I decided to take his hand. I thought that I could always pull myself free and run the hell away from there if it proved necessary. He then started asking me stuff about what I've been doing this New Year's Eve, if I had a good time, everyday things like that. He was shaking my hand all the while, and even though I was still on the edge, I started to realize that this man didn't pose as a threat to me. For politeness' sake, I asked him if he'd had a good time too. After a short while, he let go of my hand, said, "Happy New Year," and went down the sidewalk. He was probably under the influence of alcohol at the time, but he must have been one of those people who become happy when they're drunk. I felt really stupid, but relieved too, as I continued on my way home. In the end, he didn't mean me any harm. I actually thought he was kinda sweet for asking a random stranger if they'd had a good night celebrating, to be honest. Yet, I'll never forget the indecisiveness and spark of fear that ran through me at the moment he stretched out his hand to me.